Ah, hello everyone. I've just been, uh, I've just been imagining I'm walking round the field at Strumpshaw Tree Fair, and I've been watching the step dancers and James and Fiona and the crew, and then I've walked across and I've seen the musicians on the stage, and I've wandered round. And I've looked at the stalls, the plants, the woodworkers. I've sat and had a cup of tea outside the wagons. And I'm thinking, really it's about time I did some work. And I've wandered across to my storytelling shelter. There's a few people about. They sat on the carpet. They sat in the little chairs and the bigger chairs. And they're waiting for a story. And I was hoping Pauline was going to tell one, but she's probably already done it or been away or she's somewhere else in the field. So I'm going to have to do it myself. It's always a pleasure at the Strumpshaw Tree Fair. And I think I'm going to do one of my favourite stories. It's a story I've been telling virtually since when I started storytelling. And it's Mossy Coat, which was, for the folklorists amongst you, was collected from an English gypsy woman in about 1915. And lots of people do different versions of it. And this is mine. And it's from way back in time when my hair was dark and my beard was ginger and all my teeth were my own. And there was a girl. She was the most beautiful girl in the village. Everyone wanted to marry her, including the local tinker. The man went from door to door, selling and mending things and making beautiful pieces, working with tin and making tin cups and saucepans. But so every night he'd bring her presents, sometimes a necklace, sometimes earrings, sometimes a bracelet. She loved the presents, but she didn't want to marry the man, so she ran up to her mum and she said, Mum, I love the man, love the presents, but I don't want to marry the man. What can I do about it? Mum said, Don't worry, I'm making this petticoat. Well, for those of you who don't know what a petticoat is, it's a kind of underskirt. I'm making this petticoat. When it is finished, all our troubles will be over. In the meantime, tell him you can't marry him until he brings you a dress of white satin with gold leaves on it, the size of a man's hand, and it must fit perfectly. Well, she ran down steps. My mum says, I can't marry you till you bring me a dress of white satin, gold leaves on it, the size of a man's hand, and it must fit perfectly. Well, he took her measure and off he went, and a week later he was back. And what did he have? But a dress of white satin, gold leaves on it the size of a man's hand, and it fitted perfectly. Mum! Don't worry, she said. I've nearly finished the petticoat. In the meantime, tell him you can't marry him until he brings you a dress of silk, the colour of the birds of the sky, and it must fit perfectly. Well, once more she told him, and once more he went away and came back a week later, and what did he have but a dress of silk, the colour of the birds of the sky, and it fitted perfectly. Mum, don't worry about it, she said. I've nearly finished the petticoat. In the meantime, tell him you can't marry him until he brings you a pair of silver slippers, and they must be neither too big or too small. They must fit perfectly. Well, she went downstairs, down the little steps. My mum says, I can't marry you till you bring me a pair of silver slippers, neither too big or too small. They must fit perfectly. Willie looked at her 3-inch feet, and off he went. After a week he came back, and what did he have but a pair of silver slippers, neither too big or too small. They fitted perfectly. "Mum!" "Don't worry," she said. "I've nearly finished the petticoat. In the meantime, tell him if he meets you outside the church at 10 o'clock tomorrow, you'll be married." Well, Mum hadn't steered her wrong yet, but she was a bit worried now. So she went down the steps and my mum says, "If you meet me outside the church at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we'll be married." Well, he's happy and he's laughing and he's doing cartwheels up the street. Meanwhile, she's back upstairs. "Mum, what have you done to me?" "Don't worry," she said. "I've finished the petticoat." And it wasn't any ordinary petticoat, but it was a petticoat of moss with gold threads running through it, and it would take her anywhere she wanted. Mum, who knew a thing or two about the future, told her to put on a mussy petticoat. Over the top of it she put her dirtiest, grottiest working clothes. She would take her best clothes, put them in a bundle under her arm, and wish herself 100 miles away. When she got there, she was to walk. She came to a big house. She was to knock on the front door and ask for a job. Well, just like you would, she did exactly what her mum said. She put on a mossy petticoat. Over the top of it she put her dirtiest, grottiest working clothes. She took her best clothes, put them in a bundle under her arm, and wished herself 100 miles away. When she got there, she walked till she came to a big house. She knocked on the front door and asked for a job. "Yes, what can I do for you?" said the mistress. "Have you got a job?" she said. "And what can you do?" said the mistress. "I'm the best cook in the world," said Mossycoat. "I've already got a cook," said the mistress. "I tell you what, you can be the undercook, the cook's assistant." Which took her down and introduced her to all the other servants. Well, in those days, the best job in the kitchen was the cook's, and the second best was the undercook. No way we're going to let this little travelling girl come in off the street and take the second best job in the kitchen. So as soon as the mistress was out the way, they gave her all the nasty jobs to do, cleaning out the fireplace, cleaning the grease from the pan. They wouldn't even let her wash. She soon had dirt from the tip of her toes to the tip of her nose. Well, life carried on like this for some time until news came of a great dance, and it was to last 3 nights. And the first night, the mistress invited Mossycoat up to her room. All the other servants thought she was going to get the sack. She was going to lose her job. When she got up there, the mistress said, "Mossycoat, would you like to come to dance myself, the master, and our son?" Mossycoat said, "Thank you kindly, ma'am. But look at the state of me. If I sat in your fine carriage, I'd make the seats all greasy and nasty and disgusting. And if any fine gentleman sat next to me, I'd make his silk suit all greasy and nasty. Thank you kindly, ma'am, but I can't." She went back downstairs and told all the other servants. "Liar," they said. And they hit her on the head with skillets. Well, anyone who doesn't know what a skillet is, it's a cast iron frying pan. Ouch. Well, the next day the same thing happened again. And again the mistress invited her to the dance, and again she turned down the invitation, and again she came downstairs, and again the servants asked what the mistress wanted, and again she told them. And again they called her a liar, and they hit her on the head with skillets. Well, by this time, as you can understand, she was getting a little bit upset. So by an enchantment, by magic, she put all the servants to sleep. She went upstairs. She put on a mossy petticoat, a dress of white satin, gold leaves on the size of a man's hand, and her silver slippers, and she whisked herself at the dance. And she danced all night with the mistress's son. Whenever she was asked where she came from, all she'd say was she came from a place where they hit her on the head with skillets. Well, at the end of the night, she made her excuses. She went out in the corridor. She wished herself back to the big house. She turned into changed back into her working clothes and woke up all the other servants. "Well, whatever happened to us?" They said. "Oh, you've been asleep." She said, "Oh, please don't tell the mistress." They said, "Do have this pair of stockings. Do have this bar of soap. Do have next week's money." They were kind to her for 5 minutes. But the next day, when the same thing happened again they called her a liar, and again they hit her on the head with skillets. Once more she put them to sleep. This time she put on a mossy petticoat, her dress of silk the colour of the birds of the sky, and her silver slippers, and she wished herself at the dance. And she danced all night with the mistress's son, and whenever she was asked where she came from, all she'd say was she came from a place where they hit her on the head with skillets. Well, at the end of the night, she tried to get away, but the mistress's son, he was one of those boys that held on too tight, 8 arms, just like an octopus. She thought, forget this. And she just wished herself away from the middle of his arms. And as she disappeared, his hand must have just touched her foot, for one silver slipper fell off. Back at the big house, once more she woke up the servants, and once more they gave her presents so she wouldn't tell the mistress. But the mistress's son, he couldn't sleep. "Mum, I'm in love. Mum, I've got to find her. Mum, I can't stand it." "Neither can I," said Mum. "And if it'll keep you quiet, we've got all the girls of the land, and we'll try the silver slipper on each of them." And they tried them all, and it fitted none, and the only one who hadn't tried it on was Mossy Coat herself. And of course, as soon as she tried it on, it fitted perfectly. "He's about to take her in his arms. Hold on," she said. And she went upstairs and came down in a dress of white satin. "He's about to take her in his arms again. Hold on," she said. And she went upstairs and came down in a dress of silk, the colour of the birds of the sky. This time he learnt his lesson, and he asked her story, and she told him those parts she wanted him to hear. But she said nothing about being hit on the head with skillets. "The one thing I don't understand," he said. "You said you came from a place where they hit you on the head with skillets." Well, she said not a word. She just looked round at at all the other servants, and the master and the mistress and their son understood perfectly, and those servants were driven from the house by the dogs, and there were new servants employed, and there was a great wedding, and there was masses to eat, and even more to drink, and of course, had you been there, each and every one of you would have been invited. Why, Ben, story ends. Now, I think I'm just trying to take a little wander around the field. I can hear some music in the distance. Is that the Doyle family I can hear? Maybe. I want to catch Thomas singing a ballad. Yes. I think I'll walk down the field. So for now, goodbye. Enjoy the fair.